Give me a little intro there, Gomer.
You're listening to episode number 53 of the Station 71 podcast. My name is Mario, and this week I'm joined by my co-hosts,
Beth,
Brian,
and Kirsten.
So we are going to round out our Haunted Mansion in-depth tour with a quick ride through, if you will, of the attraction, talk about some of the show elements and how they work in the attraction, go over some cool facts and all of that fun stuff. So disclaimer, this show is going to break some of the magic down and tell you how some of the attraction works. If that's something you don't want to listen to, we are not offended that you will not be listening to this show. That said, we're going to dive into some news topics this week, so feel free to stick around and hear what's going on in Walt Disney World. I'll put a little clip in here of how far to skip ahead if you want to, hear you want to hear the news, but then stop. So, that said, first news story we have this week is that the Minnie Vans are going to be releasing a new pricing structure featuring a $15 flat fee plus a per mile charge, which is to be announced. Who here did Minnie Vans again? I think that was Beth.
That was me.
Kirsten.
Oh, Kirsten. Right. How do you feel about this?
Well, I did it when it was only $20, so I really got a good deal. And I don't know. I guess it depends on where you're going. Like, I feel like it's probably one of those things where they did the math and they know they're going to make more this way, which is irritating, but whatever.
Yeah, I think that it could be a good deal for, like you said, depending on where you're going, rather than, I guess, depending on what the per mile fee ends up being. But I think, saving a little bit of money at least would be nicer than $25. But then again, if you're going further, then $25 would probably have been a better deal.
Oh, I'm really curious to see what the per mile charge is.
I'm really curious to see where the point of it actually hitting the $25 previous fee is. Like, at what point in the parks does it go, okay, this is, over what it was originally?
Any Animal Kingdom to anywhere.
So, next up we have the facade of Magic Kingdom's Club 33 in Adventureland has been revealed. Looks like it's going to be, where was this again? Exactly, where is this located? I can't exactly tell from the pictures.
This is like, it's on the right, kind of behind Sunshine Tree Terrace, I want to say, when you first come in. I might be wrong on that.
Is it where they used to do the meet and greet with Tinkerbell? Or is that now the Skipper Canteen?
Brian, you've never done the meet and greet with Tinkerbell?
I'm just going to say,
I feel like
I did it because the Tinkerbell movies are amazing, remember? So
I've never done the one in Adventureland. I've done the one on Main Street.
I feel like that one's been gone for a while too, hasn't it?
it has.
Yeah, I didn't even know that it was there, to be honest.
It's weird because whenever I was working there, they were building that, and it had just been something else, and then they were building the Tinkerbell meet and greet, and then it only lasted for like a year or two. I don't know, it's very short before they closed it again.
Why was the Tinkerbell meet and greet in Adventureland?
Because she's a really amazing adventurer. You would know that if you had seen the movies.
I'm pretty sure it was to promo one of the movies.
They're all on Netflix.
Kirsten's little plug.
I will say, out of like all the movies that Disney's done that were not theatrically released, that was probably, or they were probably some of my favorites.
Yep.
Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. I'm just saying.
I don't know.
What? Okay, maybe I guess I need to watch these Tinkerbell movies if they're comparable.
I'm telling you, I was not a believer, but I am now.
Oh my god, which one was it? I think it was the Never Beast one. That one almost made me cry. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. That was it almost brought a tear.
Man.
Just wait until they come out with Pocahontas 3, back to the old world from the new world.
Oh my god.
Oh goodness. So back to Club 33 from that one. It's rumored to be called the Captain's Quarters and have heavily inspiration from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And it looks like there's also like a little mini fireworks deck that we can see, but it's pretty small. Those are the takeaways that I have from this. Anything else that you guys want to share besides the fact that we'll probably never get to go here?
I just am banking on the fact that my friends that are cast members will eventually know somebody who has a membership and be able to hook me up somehow. Maybe that'll happen.
Are you allowed to bring guests in if you have a membership?
Yeah.
How do you think like everybody else has gone? Like Tom Butcher or whoever.
I don't know.
Lots of money.
I'll be curious to see, because I know in Disneyland it's actually a lot of corporate like companies that have memberships, and they take guests and, you know, clients and that sort of thing. So I'll be curious to see like if that happens in Orlando too.
Well,
Yeah.
from what I read, the only people who are being invited to purchase memberships right now are residents of Golden Oak.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
So, I guess
Yeah,
if they have, you know, if they're company people, then maybe they will use it as a business opportunity.
I'm interested to see what the clientele is here. So, final news story for the week is that Disney is expanding its hyper-reality experiences with a new Wreck-It Ralph VR coming to Disney Springs in the fall of 2018.
I'm really excited about this. I've heard such good things about The Void, but I'm not a big Star Wars fan. So the idea of a similar experience with something like an IP that I do care about is exciting.
I think even if you don't like Star Wars, the idea of the Void is just super enticing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've considered doing it just because it seems so awesome. I'm just worried it'll make me sick.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing I would be worried about too. So,
Yeah, I gotta say, I think if you go back and listen to I know we've mentioned this, I think, a couple of times during the news as a rumor, I am not surprised at all that it's not actually going into the park.
yeah, so the previous rumor was that we were going to get something VR themed to Wreck-It Ralph where Stitch's Great Escape was. Now that this is coming to Disney Springs, I'm kind of wondering what the new rumor is going to be or what we're actually going to get there.
Yeah. It is interesting, though, that, a lot of rumors tend to have a little bit of truth to them, even if it's not the whole truth. So, with this being, the Wreck-It Ralph VR thing's coming to Stitch's Great Escape. It's well, they got half of it right.
Well, and that's also kind of funny because I was looking at, scrolling through Facebook today, and one of the Facebook pages I follow shared a brand new news article about a Mary Poppins flat ride coming to the UK Pavilion, and we talked about that and said it was a debunked rumor on our rumors episode. So it's kind of funny how these things either resurface, come back into play, and like you said, maybe even have a little bit of truth to them.
Mm-hmm.
So before we dive into our news topic this week, I kind of wanted to read over some stuff, share with you guys some things that our listeners have said, and maybe discuss them a little bit. The first one that we had was from a listener, Sam. He sent us an email that said, I just wanted to drop a line from you in the UK where my wife and I love listening to your podcast. We're massive Disney fans and make the trip over from the UK as often as we can, so listening to you guys talk Disney helps scratch the itch between trips. Following listening to the 2 episodes on the history of Disney animation, we've put together a list and have committed to watching every Walt Disney animation or supporting studios, i.e. Disney Movie Tunes, Pixar, Studio Ghibli, in release order. At the time of sending this email, they've watched from Snow White to Sword in the Stone, which is insane.
That is so impressive.
Yeah, that's very impressive.
We were talking about this before. We released that episode like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Dude.
And the
That's
fact
so
that
crazy.
Do y'all work? That's what I want to know.
They're just dedicated.
Sam, send us an email and tell us how often you've been watching these movies, because I'm so interested. Like, I thought about doing this a couple times, and just the idea of it taking so long has been so daunting to me.
Man,
See?
I hit a wall just trying to fill in some of the gaps of ones that I hadn't seen to prepare for the episode.
I won't even commit to watching the Marvel movies because I
was
feel like
about
there's
to
too many of those.
Maybe Sam can inspire you, Kirsten.
So the other one I wanted to talk about was from our friend Juliet, who always comments on our Facebook. And she said that the Haunted Mansion episode is one of her favorites. She wants to hear more attractions similar to this. So we're going to go through some of her suggestions at a later date. If you guys have any other suggestions you wanted for episodes like this, that would be awesome. And the other thing that she wanted to ask us was if we have any useful apps for Walt Disney World, or things that we use in the Disney parks. Personally, I only use the My Disney experience. I don't think I've ever used anything else, but I know you guys had some thoughts on some other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely use my Disney experience most, but I do check out Lines, the touring plans app, from time to time. Like I was telling you guys earlier, it like shows what the posted wait time is, and then they use an algorithm to determine whether or not that they think that that's accurate. So, like, you know, if the posted wait is 70 minutes, sometimes it'll say, well, it's only expected to be 45 minutes. So that's kind of helpful. And then also it has a little like note when it's like if the line is going to go up or down, it'll say like, wait until 7 p.m. to ride this, and the line should be shorter, or, you know, vice versa. You should ride it now because the wait's not getting any shorter. So that can definitely be helpful. So I do check that from time to time when I'm in the parks.
And there were a couple, I don't remember what they're called, that we used on our program, and it was like just a ride tracking app, and it was a counter basically. You could count how many times you rode ride. So if somebody like wanted to keep it on their phone for every trip, like when I was working there, counted how many times I'd ridden Tower of Terror, because that's the kind of girl I am. But I don't use it anymore. But if you were going to go for a long time, like a week or something, it might be fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. I also do check the touring plans website while I'm there. I mean, I know Beth kind of touched on it with their Lines app, but they do have a lot of like useful information for while you're in the parks as well. I have it saved as kind of like an app, so when you click on it, it opens up the web page. I guess that counts.
Also, you know, if you're planning in advance, touring plans can be super helpful, not just because, like, if you have a subscription, it can help you plan out your day. They also have a feature where they'll look for dining reservations, and I think you can set up to 2 notifications. So you put, like, I want to go on this date to Cinderella's Royal Table for dinner, and it'll look for it, and then as soon as it finds one, like, within those parameters, it'll send you a text and be like, hey, go book this right now. So that's actually helped me a couple of times get those kind of hard to make reservations.
Nice. I'm going to use that when we go down this next time. I'm super excited to try that out.
Also, I was just going to say the one other app that I kind of do check is I'll look if there's something that I really want, but I don't want to have to carry it around or deal with like packing it. I'll check and see if it's on the Disney Parks app. And if it isn't, then I'm like, okay, well, I don't have to decide right now if I want it. So that's just a little, maybe a personal thing, but can be helpful as well.
I guess we should also probably say that the Play Disney Parks app is a thing. I haven't used it yet.
Opened it and I realized that I think this is the first time I've opened it in how long's it been out? 2 months. I think I
deleted it.
Yeah, it's so bad, and they still haven't even updated it to include all the parks. I think Disney's just given up on this.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I mentioned this on the show or not, but I heard a rumor that it was affecting the the actual Disneyland Max Pass. And if you had both apps installed on your phone and you opened the Play app while you had Max Passes saved, the Max Passes wouldn't show up in the app.
Man.
That's fantastic. Not only is the app itself broken, it's breaking other apps too.
Yeah.
Well, and my thing with that is it's so funny that they don't even they don't correlate with each other at all.
No.
Other than probably your Bluetooth location.
Man, I would be so angry.
So I guess that just about ties all of the housekeeping news stuff up. I guess at this point, I'll throw it out there again. We're about to get behind the magic here and take a look at some of the things that make the Haunted Mansion great and some of the stuff that goes into the actual show itself. So if you don't want to hear any of that stuff, this is your chance to turn off the podcast and we'll say goodbye until next week. But if you do want to stick around, we're excited to have you and we're excited to talk some Haunted Mansion.
Yeah.
So I broke the show notes down kind of as if we were riding the attraction itself. So we'll start in the queue and then we'll kind of go from there. I know we talked a little bit about the facade in our Adventureland tour, but I figured this is the most cohesive way to tell this story and go through the attraction. So yes, I really want to plug this again and say this before we start going in, but I actually picked up at Brian's recommendation the Haunted Mansion Imagineering a Disney Classic like he talked about last week, and I have to say that is probably my favorite book now. I give huge credit to Brian for recommending that, and if you didn't take his recommendation last week, please take it this week because I loved this and a lot of my notes came from there.
It's really not that expensive. I don't know if you got yours at the same price. I mean, it's printed at $23 on the back of mine, so I assume that's where it sells for everywhere. But for the size of it and all the pictures you get for a coffee table book, I think it's a pretty good deal too.
Yeah, that's what I got mine for. I want to say it was on Amazon cheaper, but hang on 1 second. Actually, I'm pulling it up. It's $17.59 for Amazon Prime, which is not bad at all. But I was impatient and didn't want to wait for it to come in, so I bought it for $22. So I guess we can start this off. I started this off with the interactive queue elements because I really don't remember the queue before that. Do you guys?
No, I only rode it once or twice before they changed it, I think, and I was a kid.
Yeah, I hated that ride before. Seriously, I used to hate Haunted Mansion. This tour that I went on that I'm going to talk about is what made me fall in love with it.
Funny enough, I remember the first time I rode Haunted Mansion, I was actually afraid to ride it.
Yes, me too.
And now it's a must do at least twice on every trip that I'm on. So I guess we'll start this off. 2011, Disney opens the Haunted Mansion with their interactive queue. The idea is to entertain guests as they wait. And the interactive queue was the design on the interactive queue was helmed by Pete Carcillo. I am so bad at
Pete
names.
Carcillo. Okay, I'm sorry. I kind of know him.
Do you?
Well, okay, I know an Imagineer that I've talked with several times just about his job and how much I want to be an Imagineer. And he is really good friends with Pete Carcillo, and he set up just an informational interview kind of call one time. But it was long ago. I don't remember it.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, he's a project manager, I think, now.
Huh. Well, for those that don't know him, he's a third-generation Imagineer and a longtime protege of the master sculptor Blaine Gibson. And Eric Goodman was also selected to work on this project as well as part of, or as per his elements that he had placed in the Interventions buildings in Epcot. So that's pretty cool. The idea originally came because this was around when My Magic Plus and the Magic Band programs were kind of early on, and they knew that the long-term goal was to provide the guests with more control on how they plan their visit to the Magic Kingdom. I thought this quote was pretty cool. We thought guests who elected the standby option should be rewarded for choosing a more immersive path. And I think that's really cool because I think Haunted Mansion is one of those few attractions that I don't like to fast pass just because I really enjoy the queue.
Yeah.
Me too.
I love this note that they put in the book about the Imagineers referring to the updates to make the queues more interactive as scene one. Like, and I think it's really true of the Haunted Mansion. If you go through the interactive queue, like, it is definitely a huge part of the story of the ride now.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were talking about in our episode where we talked about, just the ambience of this area, it really does tell a story from start to finish the second you look at the Haunted Mansion.
Mm-hmm.
I could honestly stand there in front of the riddle one, and do that all day. Like, sometimes I'll stand there and just tell people, like, pass me, because I want to do the riddles. Like, that's my favorite part.
Skipping ahead a little bit, because you're talking about the stone busts, right?
No, in the queue, like where Leota gives you a riddle about how somebody died.
Oh, okay. Because there's a couple different riddles in this queue, and I think that might be why I like it so much. There's a lot of like weird puns and stuff. But this queue is one that I can do that with too. I remember the one trip where we went to Not So Scary, specifically in front of the stone busts. I sat there with my fisheye, and I like kind of was laying down on the ground in front of the bust trying to get like a really good picture of them. And like people kept coming up behind me and like thinking I was stopping the line. I was like, no, go ahead. I'm trying to take a picture here. I was that person.
That's funny.
But I love this queue so much. Another cool fact is that the Imagineers kept coming up with different ghost designs from lion tamers, cowboys, robbers, and barons. But in order for the ghost to actually make the cut, they had to have a story to follow along with, which really kind of speaks volumes because Disney really loves to tell their stories. The quote was that if there are 999 ghosts, as divergence as kings, mummies, minstrels, and even Caesar's ghost, there had to be a larger backstory to explain how the eclectic collection of spirits came to be in one place. Like I said, that's really cool because they really had to have a story in order to make the cut for even the queue.
Really shows the attention to detail that the Imagineers took for this.
Yeah. So I kind of did a little bit of fun facts about each of the interactive elements. Feel free to chime in as we go through them because I could just ramble through all of this and, But the first element that we come up to is the 5 stone busts, often referred to as the Dread family. Each plaque under the bust features like kind of a riddle on how they died, or rather were killed by other members of the family. So there's already, as the second you walk into the queue, kind of like this murder mystery element that you can figure out based on the design of the bust. And I thought that was fascinating. I didn't actually know that because I almost never actually stopped to read them. But really cool that they thought to do that right from the gate.
It is very easy to miss, but I think what I love about the queue especially, but even the mansion as a whole, is like it really rewards you for digging into the like minor details of everything.
Yeah, and we'll get to that later on, but as we were kind of going through this and I was reading through the book, and I flipped to the section about the ballroom scene, I thought about how every time I ride this, I feel like I see a different ghost. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where just because you pay attention to the details of this attraction, you really get that experience out of it.
Yeah, for sure. We actually were talking about that on my most recent trip. I was just like, I can't believe how many times I've ridden this and I still see stuff that I didn't notice before.
I think that's what makes it one of the best attractions.
For sure.
Definitely.
But the next piece of interaction that you come up on is the organ, which plays along to Grim Grinning Ghost as you press the keys. Fun little fact is that the brand name on the organ is Ravenscroft, which is a tribute to the lead singing bust voiced by Thurl Ravenscroft. And alongside of it, it also has the musical instruments that you can push as well.
I've never noticed the Ravenscroft thing.
Thanks to that book, I did. And I can say that I never noticed it before. Or I may have noticed it, but I never put two and two together.
Now, did we want to throw in the fun fact in case people don't know who Thurl Ravenscroft is?
I had that later, but we can definitely throw that in now.
Okay.
So
He's great.
He is great.
that was horrible.
Yeah.
But Thurl Ravenscroft is Tony the Tiger, if you didn't guess that.
How could they not have guessed that?
I don't know, but you never know. He's also the singing voice for You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. But after that, there's a bunch of tombstones throughout the queue. I kind of threw this in just in the middle because they're really kind of spread out all over the place. But a lot of the tombstones pay homage to a lot of the Imagineers, such as Extensio, Mark Davis, Harriet Burns, who's the First Lady of Imagineering, Ken Anderson, Paul Frees, Raleigh Crump, Blaine Gibson, and plenty others.
And I'll pop in with my fun fact here, courtesy of my friend Allie. Paul Frees is actually the voice of the ghost host. And he also did other voices for Ludwig von Drake, which is like a duck character, which I'm not 100% sure who that is, but I know it's like some sort of duck who looks kind of like, what's his name? And also several characters, I'm just going to skip that part. Y'all can correct me and whatever. Several characters in the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, including the auctioneer, which I'm not sure since they changed. If he was the one saying we want the redhead, it might not be true anymore, but he at least used to be the auctioneer.
Cool.
Fun fact.
Do you guys have a favorite tombstone?
Leota's, because it moves.
I was about to say, that's so cliche, but
Yeah.
I do like hers the most.
I like all the pun ones.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. There's so many good pun ones that it's like, how can you not love them?
Yeah.
Do you have a specific favorite one, Brian?
Oh yeah, I like the here lies good old Fred, a great big rock fell on his head.
In the store, like one of the first Haunted Mansion merchandise things they had a couple years ago were the coasters with all of those sayings on them. And I want them so bad. I don't know why I haven't bought them yet, but they're so cute. And you should, if you like those, then I would recommend getting the coasters because I've seen a ton of people that have them and they're adorable.
Cool. Yeah, going into Memento Mori is like an exercise in not spending money.
Let's see how tightly I can hold on to my wallet. So after the tombstones, we see the sea captain Culpeper Klein, which is a tribute to the original concept of the sea captain, which we talked about last week on the show. The design of this actual tombstone features a lot of elements from Mark Davis's painting, which still hangs in the mansion. Another cool fun fact. But the last piece that we have here, which is one that I regrettably don't interact with as much because I think it's so close to the end that I'm just like, come on, let's go. Ready to go inside. But we have the resting place of poetess Prudence Pock, who perished from writer's block. She also shares the same last name as Phineas Peacock, which is one of the singing busts in the graveyard scene. Really cool fact is that this is actually stylized very similarly to the mansion scene, so it kind of already ties that story together. And I guess we move inside to the pre-show and stretching room. I guess we lumped these together, but
Oh, can I throw out a pro tip?
go ahead.
the cast member tells you to fill in all the available space, so please don't get angry when people do that.
Yeah. They
So-
really mean
pro-
it. Like, make friends with the strangers who are next to you. It'll help you get to the ride faster.
I thought your pro tip was going to be which portrait to stand under.
Oh no.
No, we are not nice enough
Don't
to share
tell
that
people
tip.
that.
I thought that's where you were going too.
Oh
But
no. That's very like secret information.
No,
You
I
have to
love it.
learn that one on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure
You get in there and you make eye contact with the person and you're like, oh yeah, they're going over there too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true.
it's really funny that you can tell like the people that go to Disney a lot by where they stand in the stretching room.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, where do we even begin? This is probably one of my like favorite effects in a pre-show room in all of Disney. I'm gonna say that a lot about this attraction.
Also, before we get to the stretching room, like the room that you walk in before that, you know, there's two different doors. I've heard that sometimes some people have told me that it's totally random, and some people have told me on certain days it's this door and certain days it's this door. Do you guys know anything about that?
I think it's just crowd control, however crowded they are, because they usually go back and forth. If it's busy.
Okay.
Oh,
Did
and if
not
you've
know.
never noticed in that room, because you're not really in that room a long time, the first room before you enter one of the two stretching rooms, there's a portrait above the fireplace, and the portrait ages as you watch.
Yes.
Nobody's ever noticed that. It's pretty cool.
So I guess we can kind of actually start there then, because we got a comment on our last episode via Twitter from a listener, Chris. He said that in regards to the last podcast, the person hanging themselves at the beginning of the ride is Master Gracie or the Ghost Host. It shows the only way out of the Haunted Mansion, which I did a little bit of digging, and every source that I have found has said something different, but it's never actually confirmed that Master Gracie and the Ghost Host are the same person.
Yeah.
A lot of places say that they're separate, but then if you look at like the Haunted Mansion comic book series, a lot of the elements from both characters are tied together. So there's no like explicit lore that says that they're the same person.
So,
Movie also like really perpetuated this too, because the main mansion owner in the movie was named Gracie. So
from my understanding, from my tour, and before we get too far into this, so I've talked about it before. I did a college program. They, from time to time, would do for any cast member these tours. You had to sign up on like the Disney employee portal, and we heard that the Haunted Mansion one was really good. It was actually the only one, really one of the only ones they offered when I was there. And so many, like, we're lucky that we got in, because it only took, 15 people maybe, and me and my roommate and two friends from across the hall went, and we had this cast member who had been at the Haunted Mansion forever named Ginger give us this very in-depth tour. Like, she knows everything about the Haunted Mansion. I don't think she works there anymore. I'm pretty sure she's retired. I'm so sad. I look for her every time. But if you ever see an old lady with a name tag Ginger at the Haunted Mansion, like, tell her she's amazing, because she is. Anyway, and so that's where I'm getting all this information. So most of the stuff I know is pretty legit, because she definitely made it clear. She wasn't like, the bus drivers where they're just perpetuating rumors and that sort of thing. Anyway, what she told us about this whole situation is it's all kind of gotten lost in translation, because the original storyline from the Imagineers ended up being too scary, so they toned some of it back, but the story's kind of incomplete. So if it was, I think, supposed to be true that Master Gracie was the Ghost Host, but then they decided not to actually say it. So that's not quite legitimate. But a lot of people think that, and it also, another reason that a lot of people think that is while you're in the tunnel room, like with all the paintings and the door knockers and stuff, there is a portrait of a guy who is, quote unquote, maybe not, Master Gracie, who has an axe I think he has an axe, and he has a noose around his neck. So that's where a lot of people get that theory from.
It's kind of really fascinating to see how that whole thing has evolved over time. And we kind of touched base on it last week, how there's so many original different stories for the Haunted Mansion and how they've all translated too. Because I was reading a lot about like the how the comic book series and stuff like that takes a lot of influence from the older stories, and there's just so many cool story elements there.
Yeah. And whenever we get to like my facts, my roommate that I went on the tour with honestly remembered a lot more than I did. So I'll just say that this is a fact courtesy of Allie, because she deserves credit because she has a better memory than me, apparently.
So let's dive into the stretching room, because there is a lot here. Do you want to start this one off with your fact, Kirsten?
Oh, sure. Okay, so when you go into the stretching room, obviously you see a ceiling above you, and then when the lights go out and everybody screams, you see a guy hanging above you. And that's why I used to hate Haunted Mansion. I thought it was too scary, but now after this tour, it's like one of my favorite attractions. Anyway, that's done with the effect of a scrim. And it's basically a scrim is like a theater term, and it's a piece of gauze, like thin kind of screen material, and it looks like you can't see through it until it's lit from behind, basically. So on the scrim, they painted the ceiling, and then when the lights go out and the lightning flashes above, it's lighting it from behind, so you can see what's above the scrim. And they use a scrim in other places, which we will get to later, but that's how they do that disappearing ceiling thing.
The easiest way to explain what a scrim is think when Disney's building construction and they put that like piece of cloth in front of wherever they're building at. If you get really close, you can kind of see through it a little bit, but until it's like you said, lit from that perfect angle, you're never going to see what's behind it. So along with your fun fact, in 2007, they added a 3-dimensional audio system, which makes the ghost host kind of appear as if he's drifting around the room. Being the huge audio nerd that I am, that really excited me.
It really is a cool effect. Like it's a really simple one for them to add in, but it works very well.
There's so many cool audio cues in this room that I didn't realize until I was reading through this book. And I was like reading it over, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And then I thought about it, I was like, I've heard that, but it just plays so much into the story that I didn't think anything of it. Like the sound of like the room sliding, you can actually hear that, and that's part of the audio track. And there's like a creaking when it comes to a halt and they're about to open the doors. So really cool stuff.
Cool. Well, I'll throw in there my cool fact, which is that the whole reason that the stretching room actually exists is because in Disneyland, they needed a way to get guests from the facade of the Haunted Mansion down into this corridor that was 15 feet underground that would actually take them over and into the show building that housed the ride. So the stretching room in Disneyland is actually an elevator that does just that. It actually lowers guests down, they walk through the corridor and then onto the ride. Whereas in the Disney World version of it, they wanted the same effect, so the ceiling actually rises up in the Disney World version.
It's so funny how they're just two opposites.
I think they both look equally cool, though. In my opinion, anyway.
As someone that's been on the Disneyland version, can you tell the difference?
Honestly, like, the only reason I feel like I could is because I knew I was in an elevator. But I feel like if I hadn't known that, it wouldn't have dawned on me at all.
Interesting. So from there, you are led out of the stretching room into the load area where you board your doom buggies and travel through a short couple series of scenes. Which I guess I lumped these all together in the show notes because I feel like this part is less noticeable, as awful as that sounds. But they all kind of like blend together to me. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
I mean, I guess they're not the like highlights of the Haunted Mansion, and I don't think they're what the casual guest really remembers when they go on it.
Yeah. So my fun fact that I'll throw out there is that the 4 portraits that flash with the lightning flashes in that first like hallway scene actually came over from Disneyland, and they were not part of our attraction originally. Originally, we had busts portraits that kind of followed you, similar to how the busts in the library seem to.
And I guess carrying into one of my fun facts is that the marble bust illusion, which was credited to Raleigh Crump and Yale Gracie, 2 Imagineers we talked about last week that worked on all the special effects. But really they kind of stumbled upon it when the other Imagineers were working on Hall of Presidents. They were taking molds of the different presidents' faces, and one of them was of Abraham Lincoln. And they had like a shell of his face molded, and they realized that when you walked behind it, the eyes followed you as you walked across the room. And that's what this is our first big spoiler, I guess, is that effect is done by just looking at the inverse of the faces, and that's how, as you move across the room, it looks like the eyes follow you. But they just kind of had that one plopped in their lap, and they were like, oh yeah, that'll work good in the Haunted Mansion, and threw it in there.
That's so funny. I wonder how many like awesome things in Disney World or Disney parks in general were just because someone saw something that inspired them randomly.
I know, right?
There's another one. Sorry.
Do y'all like stare at the bust whenever you go through that and try to see, like, instead of seeing it as a bust, like how your mind automatically sees it, do you try to look and be like, it's inverted, I can tell,
Mine always does that. Every time we ride it, I can't see it as a bust. It always looks inverted to me.
I have to try really hard to see it inverted.
I don't know what it is, but like every time I look at it, I see it inverted. And I asked someone that I was with on one of my last trips, and I was like, does that look like an actual bust to you? Because it's never looked like it's been 3D. And they're like, yeah, it is, isn't it? And I was like, no, it's inverted. That's how they follow you.
That's funny. I feel like I have seen it both ways. It just depends.
And I know we'll get into this more, but it makes me laugh to think about like how simple some of these illusions they came up with were, but they've held up so well.
They really have.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think it's my turn. Oh yeah, okay. So these next 2 about the hallway are courtesy of Allie. In that endless hallway scene, only the last door on the left is a real door. And how they do the candelabra, which I just remember this part, it's basically, okay, in Muppet Vision when he holds the thing out and it's just on a stick? Y'all know what I'm talking about? It's basically like that, but it's automatic. Like he holds the Muppet Vision, he pushes it through the door, and and it looks like it's 3D and it's floating outside the door. Yeah. It's the candelabra is just on a stick that moves automatically, basically. And then the 2 chairs in that hallway, like right in front of you, are actually hidden Donalds. If you look, they have like a Donald Duck face.
That's
I've never
funny.
noticed that.
Yeah, I'll have to look next time. Before we move on from that door thing, though, where does it go? Just backstage random?
Somewhere. Yeah, and Ginger actually told us a funny story that I guess several years ago there was a cast member who would go and dress up in some outfit, like a top hat, I don't know, and go in the hallway. And so people would see him, like, guess, and then at the end they would tell people, like, oh my God, there's a guy. And the cast members are like, there's not supposed to be a guy in there, but then he would leave, and so the cast members would go check, and there's nobody there. And so, like, it was this situation where, it was actually ghostly, but it was really just a cast member having fun.
I mean, did they ever actually catch this person?
Eventually, and I don't remember what she said. I feel like you probably got in trouble.
If they didn't, then it could have actually been worse.
Yeah, maybe
Insert
so.
Twilight Zone music.
And then I'll go ahead and say this is probably one of my favorite things that I remember from the tour is in the hall of doors, not the endless hallway, but the actual hall where there's the knocking and all that. So the knockers, it's just a little metal pin that is on like an engine that pokes out and makes the door knocker work, and they're not attached to the same power source. I think they're kind of like almost battery operated. So they knock 24/7.
Oh my gosh.
And apparently it drives the maintenance, like, and the cleaning people crazy. And whenever we were there going on this tour, like, we walk down the hallway because we were walking, we weren't riding. And they were knocking the entire time, even though nothing else was on. It was very bizarre. And then the other doors that bulge out are just made of rubber. That's how they do that.
Cool. So I got a couple here. As you're moving into the music room, you first hear the ghost host talking, and this is the only time that you actually get a glimpse of the ghost host once you're on the ride. The shadow that's cast onto the ground of the person playing the piano is actually supposed to be the ghost host himself. And also in the room with the corpse trying to break out of the coffin, Exitencio, the Imagineer that we talked about last week that did a lot of the script writing and actually wrote Grim Grinning Ghosts, provided the voice for him. So
That's cool.
Nice. So I guess from there we can move on to the Madame Leota room. Did you guys have some fun facts about that? I didn't put anything.
Oh, actually, we missed I missed the stairwell, where right after you leave the entrance, and there's this room of stairs everywhere. Only one of those stairwells is real as well. It's like over on the right and it goes down. It's basically just done with mirrors.
I was about to say, I feel like last time I rode it, I was like looking really hard and that I could tell that it was mirrors.
Yeah. And then also when you're going, I believe the transition here is when you're going from the hallway to the Leota room. Is that where they have the black or the eyes and like the whispering kind of?
yeah, that's right, after the staircase.
So how those eyes are done, it's basically just like black boxes with eyes, lit. And then they're on these very light something to help them stand up, and there's fans in there, so the fans blow and make the eyes move back and forth.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's like these things that are really so simple, but they look, like Brian said, they've just aged so well.
I think that's what really makes this attraction a classic, is that there's so many slight gags and things like that that you really wouldn't notice unless you either, read about them or did these tours, and they've held up incredibly well.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is because they are practical effects. They do stand the test of time a lot better than like projections or 3D would.
Yeah.
So seance room now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I got off track.
No, it's okay. That was actually, I missed that, so that's really cool. I'm glad you had that.
So, Madame Leota is voiced by Eleanor Audley, who is probably more famous for voicing both Cinderella's Wicked Stepmother and Maleficent in the animated Disney classics.
HBIC.
I know, it's so funny to look back at like a lot of these older Disney attractions and movies and stuff, and like how much they reuse the same people just like in different areas, like between the parks and the movies and everything. But the voice actor and the actual face actor for Madame Leota are not the same. The face actor is an Imagineer named Leota Toombs, which is where the name comes from. And the fun fact about this is in 2005, they updated the seance room at Disneyland. At this point, Leota Toombs unfortunately had passed away, so they were not able to use her to do the updated footage. But luckily, her daughter, Kim Irvine, is a Imagineer at Disney, and funnily enough, looks just like her. So they had her step in and do the new face acting for the attraction.
That's cool.
How crazy is it, though, that an Imagineer named Leota Toombs worked on the Haunted
Does that
Mansion?
not sound like just a made-up thing?
That was her destiny.
I wish that was
Yes.
my name.
Right?
Anyway, some more fun facts about Leota. So she actually does have a voice part in the Haunted Mansion. At the very end of the ride, there's the little bitty Leota, or Constance, I guess is who it's supposed to be, and she's saying, "Hurry back." That is Leota Toombs' voice.
Didn't know that.
Oh, and then I guess the rest of the facts in the Leota room are mine. Okay. Allie reminded me that of those the crystal ball Leota head thingy, there's only 2 of those. And the technology, this is mine, I remember this part. The technology behind those crystal balls and how it works is very secretive. It's very high tech. And so the whole ride actually has weight sensing pads around it. So if you climb out of your doom buggy, don't do it. I'm not recommending you to do that. The ride will stop because they can tell that there's weight, down. So in the Leota room, in the seance room, if weight is sensed on those pads, the ball will automatically go up into the ceiling so that no one can steal it.
That's so crazy.
I know, it sounds nuts, right? And when they used to have the high school night, or I don't know what it was called, where high school kids could come overnight in the park. Mm-hmm. One time, if you really look closely, I can only see it sometimes, but if you look around Leota, there's the ground right next to her is kind of just it looks like a grate, that you walk over on the sidewalk or something. It's just metal. But a high school kid actually jumped in there, and there's a giant dent in this grate. I think he broke his leg or something. But there's still the dent in there from where he jumped in and I guess was trying to go up to the seance table area.
That's crazy, man.
I mean, I love the Haunted Mansion, but I don't think I love it that much.
Right.
So, okay, you mentioned in here there are only 2 crystal ball Leotas on property. Where's the second one?
I'm pretty sure. Okay, whenever I was there, we actually saw it, and it's in the control room. Which that's another fun fact I should mention. If you know how Disney is so good about hiding their backstage areas, you never see the Pirates of the Caribbean building, even though it's obviously a massive building. The Haunted Mansion control room and the backstage area are actually right next to Small World room and backstage area. The doors are right next to each other. So yeah, that's where the other one is or was whenever I was there.
So I think that finishes all of our seance room stuff, which moves us from there to probably the most famous scene on the Haunted Mansion, which is the ballroom.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to start, Brian, and then I'll take over since a lot of those are mine?
Sure, yeah. The ghost that you can see swinging from the chandelier was named Pickwick by the Imagineers. And until Constant was added in, I believe it was 2005, this was the only other named ghost in the entire attraction other than Leota.
I read a thing too, and I don't remember if it was him or if it was it was the one from the dueling pistols portraits that was a reused animatronic from the Pirates of the Caribbean in Disneyland in their version. I don't know if it's in ours, so I didn't put it in here.
Yeah, it's the auctioneer.
Nice.
Yeah. And then the other fun fact is that in the Disneyland version, the organ that's being played was actually a reuse from the organ on the ship of 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the classic Disney movie. And they took that exact one and put it in the Disneyland one, and then they made replicas that are in all the other ones.
Was 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea a prequel to
Did I
20,000
really say
Leagues?
2,000 leagues? Oh, man.
I didn't catch that. I'm so
I didn't
glad.
either.
Okay. I basically didn't remember any facts about the ballroom, but Allie remembered a ton. Most
Why
people.
didn't we have her on?
I know. I was hoping we could last week when she was visiting, and I feel like she deserves it because I'm pretty sure the only one of my friends who consistently listens to this. So, props.
Hi, Allie.
She won one of the giveaways, though, right?
Yeah, she did.
Well, at least there's that.
Yeah. Anyway, so most people probably know about the hidden Mickey in the ballroom, the plates on the dining table. Ginger told us that whenever Imagineers or managers come visit, they put the plates back how they're supposed to be, but cast members always move them back to the hidden Mickey. So if you ever go through and it's not there, somebody important was probably touring sometime recently.
I think I've only seen it not a hidden Mickey like once.
Yeah, I always assumed that they were like glued down or something, but no, it's not that high maintenance.
Yeah, I assumed that too.
And then let's see. Okay, so the illusion used for the ghost, and this is kind of the big thing I was thinking about when we were talking about how this might destroy the magic, not safe for magic, whatever. It's actually called Pepper's Ghost. So the Doom Buggies, imagine the ballroom is a 3-story room. The Doom Buggies are basically on the second floor. So directly below the Doom Buggies and above, there are the animatronics. And if you look, there's the guy on the chandelier. If you look out and up as you're riding, if you see it in just the right spot, you can actually see his feet hanging kind of right above you. But they're directly above and below. And then there's a giant pane of glass that's basically 3 stories the whole length of the ballroom. And the ghosts are backlit, and so the reflection of the ghosts look like they're in the ballroom. So they're real animatronics above and below you, and that's how they do that. It's very cool and, amazing. And I don't know if this illusion is called Pepper's Ghost. If you want to look it up, I know there are some Google images that kind of show how it works so you can envision it.
And they're super creepy looking.
They are. And fun fact about them, a lot of them actually have the same faces. You might see the guy and the girl dancing together and might have the exact same face. And it's because they didn't want to make different molds for every single face, so they just do the same ones. And some of them are the same as characters in other attractions, like the grandma in the dining room scene or in the ballroom scene is actually the same as the grandma in Carousel of Progress.
I knew you were going to say that. As soon as you said the grandma, I was like, please say Carousel of Progress. Please make these two related.
Yeah, I typed these, and now these facts are gone from our notes. So I'm kind of confused.
Oh.
But I don't know. It's probably my fault somehow. Anyway, and then there's some that are the same as characters in Pirates of the Caribbean and that sort of thing. What else? Oh, the ballroom, the female dancers are wearing old princess costumes from the park, like kind of when they had not an IP princess, but just, quote unquote princesses walking around, old costumes that were worn out. So that's what the girls are wearing.
Always resourceful, Disney.
Yeah. And then there's actually a book in the ballroom. I can't remember where it is, and I couldn't find a good picture but there's a book in there somewhere that has notes and tributes to former Mansion cast members that have passed away. And then last fun thing, over on the left, there's a pair of sweetheart chairs, and I couldn't find a picture of these on Google Images either. I'm very disappointed. And they're one of the last existing sets that have been kept together. And so basically a set of sweetheart chairs, the inner sides have lower arms, so people could hold hands more easily. It's like a very old-fashioned thing.
Aww.
Oh.
I have one more fun fact about the ghosts in this room. The Imagineers actually made a mistake with this. They went through and they made all the animatronics, and they forgot that the guests were going to be seeing the reflections of them, so it was going to be backwards from what was actually occurring. And because of that, all the dancing ghosts, the women are actually leading the men in the waltz.
Ah.
So it was either a mistake or Disney was just being very forward thinking.
So progressive.
So that would bring us up into the attic, which is, I know, Brian's favorite scene.
See, I really like the storyline that it has, but I think the execution of the Constance, I don't even know if you want to call it an animatronic, because in my mind it's not an animatronic. Like, I think the execution's pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. It's a dummy with projection.
Yeah, that's not animatronic.
Mm-mm. But aside from that, the scene is great.
Yeah. So I guess I'll mention the storyline here is actually that, Constance is this Black Widow bride who basically marries and kills her husband to work her way up the social ladder. If you look at the wedding tables that are set up for each one, you can see the decorations and like the gifts that are placed on the table get more and more expensive as you move through her timeline of husbands. And also the husbands are like obviously from higher class as you move through it.
Oh, and she also gains a pearl necklace for every marriage if you look at the wedding pictures.
Oh, cool. I didn't notice.
Yeah, I'm glad that you put that, because I pointed it out to a friend on my most recent trip, and he's like, this is why I wanted to go to Disney World with you. Shout out Caleb.
Oh, let's see. And then this is probably one of my favorite things, but also the most frustrating things for me. So kind of over in the left back corner of the attic, there is this really elaborate, large chair. And it's a set of 4 chairs. Supposedly all 4 are on property somewhere. One other one is in Pirates of the Caribbean. It's in the end in like the treasure room, and Jack Sparrow is sitting like sideways in it. And then another one, I think, is still in the lobby of the Norway restaurant. I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm not going to try and embarrass myself. But I don't know if that's completely up to date. That's what we were told, but I have actually never been in there. And then the 4th one, nobody has found yet, or at least nobody back then had found it and shared that with other cast members. But apparently it's somewhere on property in Disney World, and that's why it's very frustrating for me, because I'm always looking for it. Especially, I feel like Tower of Terror would be the perfect place for it to be hidden, but I don't think it's there because I've looked everywhere.
I bet it's just a random chair in Club 33.
Ugh.
Oh, gosh.
It should be available to everyone, not just the rich people.
I've been sitting on it this whole time.
Yeah, so if you want to look for the 4th chair and you find it, let us know, and I will love you forever.
So I kind of know it's not in our mansion, but I wanted to take a moment to talk about the Hatbox Ghost because he is advertised in our park so heavily.
That's so weird.
Yeah, I think it's because there's such a fascination with this animatronic, and I guess you can confirm how cool it is when we, go through that. But the thing about the Hatbox Ghost is that he was a ghost that was planned to be in the original iteration of Disneyland's Haunted Mansion. The animatronic would flash his head from his body into the little hat box that he's holding. And at the day of the actual opening of the park, this animatronic didn't work, so he had to be pulled. And as we kind of talked about before, Disney, or in the day of pre-social media, there was a lot of buzz around the Haunted Mansion, and everyone wondered why this ghost was removed. But aside from, the rumors of it being too scary or that it gave someone a heart attack and killed them, and that's why it had to be pulled out, it really was just that the animatronic didn't work. He was added back to Disneyland's mansion in 2015.
So from what I understand, it's not necessarily that the animatronic didn't work, it's that they couldn't get the lighting effect to be...
Yeah. Well, it worked, but
like you could
like you
still,
said, the lighting wouldn't.
Yeah, like
you could see how it worked. I think it was what it was.
So basically, I think what they did was they had like a head on the actual body, and then they had a head, like a physical head, in the hat box. And the way that they were trying to get the lighting effect was, like you said, it would go from his head to the hat box, but it just kept being that you could see both heads. If like you're not, it was very like breaking the magic, like why can I see both heads kind of thing. So that's ultimately why he did get removed. But it is a really cool animatronic, and I was really excited to see it when I went to Disneyland. I think it would be great if they would bring that to ours, because it wouldn't take up a whole lot of space. It doesn't there, so, and as heavily as, like you said, that he's advertised, I'm kind of surprised they haven't done it yet.
I really want to see this animatronic. I want to go visit all of the other mansions now that I've read that book, but that's another story. So from there, we're flung out of the attic into the graveyard, and I have a lot of things on here. So this is actually the most heavily populated scene in the mansion. It has the most animatronics out of the entire ride. Some of the figures in this scene were built without their skin, just to kind of give them a different appearance. They also wear costumes that give them the same translucent appearance. Other animatronics are painted with fluorescent paint that are illuminated by the black light, and there are a number of pop-up ghosts that appear in this scene as well. Does anybody else feel like the pop-up ghosts are super cheesy?
Yes,
Yeah.
oh my god.
That's the one part that I hate in here.
I was literally going to talk about that. Every time I ride it, I'm like, I really just wish they would either make that better or take it out.
And I'll just say it's funny that they say that the figures were built without skin and they wear costumes to make them look translucent, because it's literally like they look so bad in the light. It's like if you took the robot with like the wires and the metal or whatever and put clear plastic on it, that's what they look like. Like, if pay close attention and you can tell how kind of crappy they are next time you ride. And one like not confirmed fact that we learned is, when you first go down and you see the grave digger right in front of you, and how he looks really scared. It's like a common kind of, what's the word? Old wives' tale, I guess, as far as Disney's concerned, that he's looking at you and he looks so scared because you're a ghost. Like you're the 1,000th ghost. And that's why he's staring straight at you and he looks terrified and he's shaking. So that's kind of like a fun fact.
Which makes sense because you're actually thrown out of the window.
Yeah. And then you mentioned the scrim, and I'll let you talk about that, but the scrim in this room is actually the largest one in the world. So I'll let you talk about everything else.
Oh, cool.
That's crazy.
They, to get into that, this entire room relies a lot on forced perspective, which is a big thing that Disney uses. Look at Cinderella Castle. That is a huge example of forced perspective. Basically, the further something away is, the smaller the actual set piece is going to be. So it makes it look like the room is a lot bigger than it actually is. And to do that, they also have thin pieces of theatrical scrim that hang between the Omnimover track and the set walls to kind of give more of a sense of depth and create an eerie atmosphere. Tying into that whole scrim thing, the one effect that I found that was really cool is the effect of the ghosts coming out of their graves, kind of like the Night on Bald Mountain scene in Fantasia. And while it's very obviously a projection, the story behind how it actually came up is really funny. Kind of like Brian was saying earlier, how some of these things they stumbled upon. Yale Gracie and Raleigh Crump were experimenting with projection of Hans Conried as the magic mirror, and they accidentally beamed his face onto a rotating mirror that created 1,000 images of his face rotating around the room. and they immediately knew that they needed to put this in the Haunted Mansion.
Or as it's more colloquially known, a disco ball.
It's just so funny that they were like playing around with this projection, accidentally shot it at a disco ball, and they were like, wow, look at all of those faces. Let's throw that in the Haunted Mansion.
Yeah.
So that's all I have for the graveyard, unless you guys wanted to throw some other stuff out there.
My last one is you see like the Viking woman at the end singing, and that signifies the end of the ride because it's not over till the fat lady sings.
I
Love
actually
that.
I missed my last one too. We missed the singing bus, and I only remember this because of that thing that Beth just sent us. But I wanted to point out, because this is another urban legend, that one of the singing busts is Walt Disney, and that is actually not true. But we did talk about how the singing busts are led by the bust that was voiced by Thurl Ravencroft, and they use the same effect as the seance scene. So that's my last little tidbit of the graveyard.
Nice.
And then finally, we end the ride with everyone's favorite hitchhiking ghosts, which I found out through reading that book that they, even though they're super popular and they're a huge part of the advertising, they literally just made it into the attraction's final design, and they weren't even really planned to be in there at all.
That's so crazy. They're like the, I don't know, mascots of the ride, other than, I guess, Leota.
Yeah.
They almost weren't in the ride.
But they also use a very similar effect to the one that's in the dining hall. And the last piece of information that I had was that Raleigh Crump's influence is seen here for the final time in this attraction through the torches that are in between the, I guess, mirrors that are there. And they're human torches that are held by human hands.
Human torches.
Yeah, Human Torches. So I was reading that book, and there was a thing in there that said that he was influenced by some French avant-garde films. One of them specifically was a Beauty and the Beast film where parts of the house were actually pieces of human bodies. And he thought, wow, that's creepy, and I need to put that in the Haunted Mansion.
Wow.
So that was cool.
Did any of y'all remember riding this before they updated the Hitchhiking Ghosts?
I vaguely remember
Yes.
it as a kid.
I kind of miss the old ones almost. Like, the new ones are cool, and it's a good update, but there's something so classic about them just, like, creepily, like, being, like, with you on the ride instead of just, like, doing kind of funny stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that's one of the few things that I can, like, kind of see a picture of from, like, my first trip when I was, like, 6 years old. And just thinking that was the, like, craziest thing I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I very vaguely remember it, but I think it's been so long that I'm, like, starting to lose that image.
I was there whenever they like revealed the new, and I just remember all of us being so excited and having to go ride it like 10 times so we could see all the different effects. And like everybody wanted to get the one where they switch your heads, because before, like, all the rumors, that's what the one that everybody was talking about, like, oh my god, they're gonna switch your heads, so crazy. Like, I wish that I was still that excited every time to ride it.
I heard, like, have you guys ever seen any of the effects having to do with Magic Band technology?
Yeah, I've seen the ones where it's like, they'll have a thing it's like headed to, and then it's wherever you're from. Like,
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never actually seen it, but I heard that was a thing.
I've not seen that yet. Now I will need to go ride it again. Now I'm excited again. You made me excited.
Yay!
This whole thing has just made me want to ride the Haunted Mansion that much more.
Right.
I can't wait to go ride this and look at things and be like, I know why it does that. I know where this is and all that other stuff. Like, this is... the funny thing is, I think a lot of people are afraid that learning these things will ruin the magic for them, but I think it only makes it more
It
magical.
does, yeah,
I
for me,
completely
definitely.
agree with
Yeah,
that.
same.
So, I guess before we close this tour out, I want to ask you, what is your favorite scene in the Haunted Mansion?
Before we close this tour out and talk about our favorite scene in the Haunted Mansion,
Oh.
I want to talk about the ring.
Oh.
yeah.
We didn't talk about that.
So, as the legend goes, for those listening who may not know, there was basically a piece of a turnstile that got cut off and was like embedded in the pavement and looked like a wedding ring. So fans started creating all these different stories about this wedding ring, and apparently it got paved over at some point and there was like major outcry. So then when they redid it with the interactive queue, they actually put a real like intentional wedding band in there. So you can find that when you're leaving the Haunted Mansion in the exit queue.
Nice.
I always love when they like take these fan theories that have kind of picked up steam over the years and they actually make it a part of the canon.
Yeah.
Me too. So,
I think it's great that Disney acknowledges a lot of that stuff.
right? So anyway, that was just my little tidbit that I wanted everyone to try and find the ring when you're leaving the Haunted Mansion. If you look hard enough, you can find it.
But don't trip and fall down.
Yeah. Now, what's your guys' favorite scene in the Haunted Mansion?
This is so hard.
I have to say, I know this is so cliche, but I think my favorite scene is the ballroom scene. Specifically because, like I said before, I feel like every time I go in there, I find something new about it.
Yeah, I would say the same for myself. I just feel like it's so iconic, and the effects are so awesome.
This is.
She's struggling with this.
I really am. Well, I just like this tour, honestly, and I feel like lame that I keep talking about it, but I'm the biggest chicken in the world, and I honestly used to be scared to go on this ride. Like, I did not enjoy it. It was not fun. Like, I don't like things popping out at me. I don't enjoy the idea of ghosts. Like, I cannot stay home by myself. Like, I'm seriously the biggest chicken in the world. And so I used to hate it, and now I just love it. So I would have to say, I think probably like the very beginning, the hallway and all that, because I used to like go into that with such dread, and now I go into it with like so much excitement for like, what am I going to see this time, and am I with somebody new, and I can like tell them all my fun facts and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Cool. I think I'm actually going to say the hitchhiking ghost scene, if I could have it back the way it used to be. But I still like the new one.
So did you guys have any final thoughts on the Haunted Mansion or anything you want to talk about before we tie
What's
this
your
week
favorite
up?
scene, Mario?
Oh, well, no, I said that. I said the ballroom.
Oh, okay. That's right.
I had to think about that. I was like, oh, did I say something? I was like, oh, no, wait, I did. It tripped me up there. But if I have to pick a different one, I like the graveyard scene as well. That's a pretty close second, just because there's so many animatronics in there. And I know I kind of dissed on like the pop-up ones, but I think like the fact that there's so many different ghosts and stuff in the graveyard, and that's where it really kind of like the big climactic moment of the attraction is. I think that's really cool for me too.
I would also say, if I had to pick a second one, that I just really like the wallpaper. When you're with the eyes.
You mean forever my desktop wallpaper everywhere?
Oh my gosh.
Wait,
literally.
so do I get to pick a second one too now?
Sure.
Go ahead. Everyone picks a second one.
The attic, because it's very elaborate. And I like to look at Will and be creepy. Well, I love the movie Gone Girls and Misery.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
That's funny. But yeah, the attic, I think, is another one of those where you can look around a million times and still see something that you didn't notice before.
I guess.
Do you have a second favorite, Brian?
I guess I'll pick the seance room.
Okay.
I really like the little rhyming riddles, whatever you want to call them, that Leo
Oh,
says.
yeah. Her
Yeah.
little chant or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a good one. I feel like that's super underappreciated.
Let me ask you guys this about the seance room. Is there a purpose to that, like, green squiggly? Like, is it just an effect? Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's just an effect.
I just feel like it looks kind of out of place.
I remember hearing about that, and we were all disappointed to hear that there is no point to it, and it still bothers me.
To me, it looks like something projecting where it's not supposed to be projecting. Or, like, it looks like it's not supposed to be there. So I didn't know if you guys knew anything different.
As far as I know, it's just an effect. That's what I was told.
Gotcha. Well, that was anticlimactic.
Sadly.
Yeah, I had to look it up because I honestly couldn't remember what it was. And that makes me feel awful. There's a whole thread on WDW Magic's forums about what it is.
Do you mean my description of green squiggly wasn't good enough for you, Mario?
I honestly didn't know what you were talking about, and I had to see a picture of it and say, oh yeah, that is there.
It's a squiggly and it's green. Come on.
So, anything else that you guys want to talk about with the Haunted Mansion, or any final thoughts you guys have?
Yeah, somebody listening to this needs to find that fourth chair and tell us where it is.
Please, I'm dying to know now. Dying to know now.
That was awful.
I was thinking to leave. Or at the end, we need to say, hurry back.
Also, I want to say before we tie this up, Haunted Mansion is so much better at Not So Scary Halloween Party. They don't do anything to it, but it's so much better because the outside has a lot of stuff going on.
I loved it. Like last time when they had the people outside, oh my gosh, I was not expecting to love it that much, but it was amazing.
It's such a little, like a minor thing, but it just makes it so much cooler.
I could have just sat there all night and listened to them because they're so good. Like, ugh.
Then that's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for joining us again on another episode of the Station 71 podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us online at facebook.com/Station71pod, Twitter at Station71pod, Instagram at Station71podcast. You can email us at station71podcast@gmail.com or call us on our new Google Voice line at 561-899-6441. We hope you enjoyed your ride, and hurry back next time.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.